So here's a very, very hearty good evening to all of you. And this is yet another edition from the Smart CA series. So we've been doing a combination of two kinds of webinars. One is technical, but more focused on basics rather than complex, detailed technical seminars. The second is we've got a series called Ananda, where the last time we had the Additional Solicitor General, Mr. N. Venkatraman speaking. And we have one more on Saturday, which is a very, very fiery speaker. Mr. M.R. Venkatesh is going to speak on India Reimagined, Bharat and beyond, and becoming #1 of the world. So please do register if you're interested, and I promise it would be fireworks filled. So here's a hearty good evening to all of you once again, and I'm very, very delighted to be addressing this webinar. The second will be taken by somebody else. So in a series of webinars, we'll go through practice essentials. And in the first of the series, we talk about the 3 Ps: constructing a firm profile, a proposal for services, and the most important of it all, which is professional fees. How do we charge professional fees? So at the end of this webinar, what's your takeaway? I plan to share about 10 templates, including a firm proposal template, which I'm sure most of you have. It's just a very simple PPT, but for really new members in practice, it might be useful. 2 is a series of proposal templates. So just so that you understand how you construct a proposal. And most of these is copy-paste across proposals. So it just changes based on the nature of the engagement. And the last that I will share with you is a fee calculator that I hope will be of some use to you. I have a few proposal templates. I can add more also. But these are all sort of draftish. You may have to clean it up before doing it. And the last is I'm also sharing the latest ICAI fee guideline, which is sort of a confidence builder, because when you have a difficult client, then you could possibly send the ICAI standard structure of fees as well, along with whatever you're sharing with your client. So without much ado, very warm welcome to all of you, and I'm very delighted to be speaking today. I'll share my presentation now, and if there's any difficulty, then you could sort of, let me know on the Q&A. I don't think there is any problem till now. So I'm sharing my screen and I hope it's visible. If it's not visible, request somebody to call me on my mobile. If it's not visible, so that I'll have a sort of a cursory look at my mobile when this program is on. So we start with what's the context. Sorry. So this is the actual run of the presentation today. It's going to be, as usual, just 1 hour, very structured. And I'll walk you through what I believe has been a very personal journey for me. I started out as a sole proprietor as well, and we have a firm that's respectable and happy. All other yardsticks are, I think, not very material, but that's what we've been able to do in this journey. And I want to share with you whatever has been my very practical experience. We've sort of gone through this many times. The context on the objective and what it means to be a CA in practice. We'll talk about pitch kits, we'll talk about proposals, we'll talk about professional fees, and we'll have a Q&A session, which I will answer to the best of my capability. But I also noticed there are other senior members, so if you want to share your experience, I'll figure out how to do it, and you can share your experience on the audio as well. So let me at the outset tell you that what Peter Drucker said. He says the objective of any business or any profession should be to actually be economically viable. So that's my core of it. And in that sense, a lot of us may want to reimagine our CA practices today. I think the profession is at a very, very different threshold from the way I see it. And it could be very relevant for us to sort of re-understand and reorient and realign. And this oft-used term, this paradigm shift. I think from what we've seen with this creation of NAFRA and the kind of turbulence that we've gone through, I think it's a good time to sort of revisit where we are. This is particularly relevant for young practitioners, lesser than about 7 years in practice. And I reckon there's a fairly large number. So you may want to kind of look at what you want your practice drivers to be. Do you want to be in a traditional domain? Or do you want to be in a new age domain? I would recommend the latter simply because you sort of need to move with the times and keep changing. The second choice that you need to make is a boutique firm versus a very large scale firm. So that's again a very personal choice. And I think there's a client demand for both. There are clients who come and say, we want to work with you because you're small and your partners are reachable. In some other cases, they say, oh no, we'd like to go to a larger firm. So this is a conscious call that you need to make. And I think within this contour, it's perfectly profitable to be in either of these scales, but you need to make that decision. And when I say large scale, I mean an overall ambition. Okay, I want to say I want to be a 500-man practice in 15 years. It's still possible. High scale versus others. Now, again, you might want to be a firm that specializes in something extremely skilled. For example, you could be in M&A, advisory on M&A, advisory on Companies Act. How do you structure mergers, demergers, etc. You could be very high on taxation. People who practice in international tax structuring, those are high skill engagements and they are very person dependent. You could specialize on SEZs. So do I want to be like that lawyer, a senior lawyer who people flock to for his personal competence or the competence of your partners? Or do you want to downstream it to be a more broad-based organization? The next question is very, very critical. Do you want to be a product organization or a service organization? So a product organization is typically, look at Uberization today. Today, what is the market? The market is not brick and mortar. It's not even click. It's Uberization. Any free floating assets that can be aggregated make money. You had free floating cars, so somebody came up with Uber. You had free floating assets, which were hotels, and somebody came up with Oyo, but what happened was a different story. You had free floating assets of students, and Byju's happened in a very big way. So these are productized. So for example, somebody came up with India filings. Somebody said, I can register a company for 5,000 rupees. All these are products. Today, there's no reason why you can't productize a service. So today, if you're doing iCofer as a service, you can productize your iCofer at least 70%. So that's the call. And the other thing is, in a highly skill-oriented practice, it's very difficult to do a productized practice. Some part of it can be productized, but not all. And the last question you need to also ask yourself is, who do I want as my clientele? So right back when I finished my CA and I got into practice after a few years, I figured out that I had not studied income tax at all where I did my articles. So I took a very careful call. I don't know even today whether it's right or wrong. I don't have retail clients. So we work largely with corporates. And then I said, look, I want to learn. So let me go to large corporates and try and absorb. So even today we service a few large corporates at whatever their fee levels are, simply because it's been a huge learning for me and my team. Now, having said, I think these are the drivers. What do you want to be in deciding what you want to be? But what are your non-negotiables? Your non-negotiables being a service organization is client satisfaction, and it comes by constant client engagement. 2, professional ethics. Whatever I do, small or large, whatever is my fee level I have agreed with, and I could have possibly even committed a mistake, I am not going to renege on my professional ethics or my professional commitment. The third important thing is you need to be profitable as an undertaking. So in this, I notice a huge, non-parity between CAs in practice and CAs in profession. Now, I've often gone back and seen, why is that a young CA in employment is able to command a 7, 8, 9 lakh fees? A salary, whereas a young CA in practice is not able to take that kind of money. I think it's very important that you be able to drive a profitable practice. See, and again, there are 2 things. Your client pays you a certain fee for a certain service. So there is, unless you choose to do something pro bono or free of cost, let's say a small trust, which is into CSR, there's no reason, I personally would think, why you will need to compromise on it. Now, how you apply the money that you make is an entirely personal call. But as an engagement, it needs to be profitable, unless, of course, there are compelling reasons, like a first-time engagement or building a brand, etc. But we are presuming that all of us fundamentally want to be profitable. And in being profitable, I am saying that I need to be able to recover at least 70% of what I would had I been in employment today. And another very interesting thing is when I ran a little, kind of survey, I found that people practice by choice. It's not by lack of it. Very few people come to practice because they've not found a job, because I think today the job market is pretty large. Another non-negotiable today is technology. You can't sort of shut your eyes to it and say, I can't upgrade, I will stay where I am, etc. That doesn't work. You need to be technologically slightly more faster. But having said that, technology is no longer expensive. In fact, in the second of the series, we'll be going through it. We are going to talk about 5 basic things. Any desk, that's free. Your webinars today, your virtual meetings are free. Your Dropboxes, your Google Drives where you can store data is free. One member actually called to tell me there are free Amazon where you can store your data, etc. So a lot of this technology is very robust and it comes to you for free, and your capability to adopt that kind of technology is very important. Another non-negotiable is yourself and your employee morale. I think beyond everything, you must be happy in what you do. Your employees must be happy. So the drivers drivers of happiness are not necessarily financial. They could come from very good training initiatives in your firm. They could come with close engagement with articles where you actually work with them. In fact, that's one of the things that I keep telling my partners is, why don't we actually work with articles? I am very happy working with articles. In fact, I don't have managers reporting to me, and I'm very happy to work with the first, second, third years. And I feel the kind of the millennial crowd especially is a delight to work with. And the last non-negotiable is continuous upskilling. Call it CPE, call it whatever you want, but I think it's very, very important to continuously upskill ourselves. Is it possible to upskill right through the domain? Obviously not. So you pick up bits and bits of this, but pick up some specialization. And in this, I've noticed that a lot of us don't have formal article training programs. So maybe it's also, if there are people who are volunteering to do it, I'm very happy to host it. If we can have a going forward, very simple article training program, modules developed, etc. And here's where firms coming together could make a big difference. So these are the non-negotiables: client satisfaction, professional ethics, profitability, technology, self and employee morale, and continuous upskilling. Somehow, when we go for an interview, one of the first things that we are asked after the initial, the assessment, is that where do you see yourself 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? I found that for most of us in practice, including myself, when I started out, I never set this vision for myself. I did not say I would be here 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line. But I think that's very important for us to do that constant reassessment of where we want to see ourselves in this. And of course, in all this, there is one more non-negotiable, is institutionalizing a practice. So today, in fact, when I was at some point, I was in a crossroad, whether I wanted to continue practice and in fact, or move to industry, because I was very scared. And I used to tell myself, oh, what will happen if I fall sick for 5 to 7 days a day? And I remember I have been out on holidays to resorts, and I would go to the border of the resort property just to get my phone signal and call my office and find out what's happening. And then when I decided to, kind of move into a broad-based partnership, I found that life was a lot more peaceful. So institutionalizing a practice is very important for you to get your revenues constantly, even if you're not day-to-day engaged in the practice. Now, the next question, which is forming part of the basics, is what are your service lines? So this is something that I just pulled out. And today you can make a choice to do any or all of this. Some of this are old gen, current gen, some of it are the next gen. So what are these? You can be a core assurance firm. You can be doing accounting and virtual CFO. So I found that accounting services by themselves are not really, if I may use the term, very profitable, because no client wants to pay for accounting. But when you throw in a virtual CFO, it gets you better charge outs. Insolvency and restructuring, that's picking up really fast. In fact, I'm trying to we have a webinar tomorrow where we have somebody called CS Nehal Kamdar, who's a very, very good insolvency professional, who's going to walk us through opportunities in the IBC space. And today there is no mature market for SME M&As. And I think that's a huge opportunity. And that is actually a fee-based activity. So you can say if my deal size is so much, I would charge typically between 5 to 10 lakhs. Business process outsourcing, startup and SME consulting, corporate laws and secretarial, Risk and business advisory, that's a very large domain. That's where your internal audits, etc. fall in. IT risk advisory, forensic services, digital transformation, and your traditional practice areas of direct taxation, indirect taxation. Foreign trade policy is a big one. So today, what's happened is in India, the laws are so large, and very often our clients do not understand what the benefits are by getting into some of these. For example, foreign trade policy. I, for one, don't know what is the EPCG absorption in the country. How many people know that you can get a duty-free import of a capital good in return to export? How many people know that you are entitled to benefits on exports? A lot of this is not very mature, and I think there's a huge advisory space there. So we start with something very fundamental: firm profile and paraphernalia, a smart profile document. So what do you cover in a profile document? The background of your firm, the team, the infrastructure, work methodology. Now, if you go to any of the larger firms, for example, I've seen one where it says, okay, my internal audit, I will do under something called as an AIM methodology. Assess, investigate and monitor, or something like that. So they have these catchy words. For example, we had come up with something called as Spark. So to say, specialized services, P for partner involvement, A for assessment quality of our engagements being very good, R for rapid delivery of services, T for technology. So you could come up with your own mnemonics or acronyms on how you want to profile yourself as a firm, and you can let that stay on all your profiles that you publish. Service lines. So today, whatever you choose from these service lines, you put them out and you say, this is the service lines that I'd offer to my clients. And today, you see, unless you have a specific client request, you can't really share whom you work with, etc. So what we do is we create two kinds of profiles. One is a profile where I don't put the client's name, but I only put case study. You say, okay, I'm doing internal audits for India's #3 company, covering all these areas. We've been engaged with them for so-and-so, etc. In another profile, I have direct names of clients itself, because there where a client has mailed you saying, can you please tell us who else you work with and what are your things? So you can mention a few names, and some of them even ask for client references. They say, okay, you're working with this software company. Can I have a reference? In which case, I don't think there is a professional ethics issue in sharing this. How should your stationery be? Obviously, very, very high quality, elegant color, best font, readable. Can you have visiting cards with QR codes? Could you look at a vertical card instead of a horizontal card? These are just some things basic. But one of the advantages in having a very standard smart profile document is the moment you meet a client, you don't even need to think. You can just come back and say, thank you, sir, for your inquiry. Kindly find enclosed my profile document. So you send out your profile document. It's just that your time to market. I noticed that in a lot of cases, I have missed out on opportunities simply because I'll say, okay, the client wants a profile. Let me come and make it. And then I would take 2 days to make that profile. And similarly, another thing that we have done now is, for example, this is exactly what our firm endeavors to do. For each of it, I have made a baby profile. So for example, for internal audits, I created a 15-page PPT. So anybody who wants me to do internal audit, I will send only that 15-page PPT. So that I send my overall firm profile as well as this 15-page PPT. Do spend some time and do all of this. And of course, Microsoft PowerPoint is a grand thing. You can do whatever you want. In fact, it gives you prompts to do the slides. So that's as far as similarly websites. A website, I think today is a must. Very few people read your profile document. In fact, a lot of business today, I think, gets transacted on WhatsApp. Especially after this lockdown, I found the WhatsApp absorption among the business community very high. They say, no, don't mail me. Just send me a WhatsApp of your profile. So in that WhatsApp, it's extremely important to do a website. And again, one of your articles, if you tell them, they'll build your website for you. You have so many website builders, very fundamental, 3 pages, 5 pages, etc. Now, the ICAI has guidelines on websites. It can be pull, it should not be push. Well, what's pull and what's push? That's very interesting. It's only for me. It's very personal. What I think is pull could be somebody else's push, but better to stay on the safe side, and it should be a pull-based website and not a push. So you can't say we are India's biggest this, we are, they want you to advertise less and make it more subtle. And one of the easiest things I found is whatever profile document you're building, you just copy paste and make your website. So it's standard. Another very interesting thing is I communicate with a lot of chartered accountants on emails. Very rarely do I find a pre-configured standard signature. I think it's extremely important. Whether you're on Yahoo or on a Gmail, that really doesn't matter. Ideal would be to get your firm profile name. So even that's free today, right? You can, so for example, I can get spk.in. I'm told it's free. So if there's a firm that's called GVSR, you can have gvsr.in and it's free. So just do some Googling, you'll figure out how to do it. And beyond a point, they become paid when your number of mail IDs, etc. increased. So on the emails, I think these pre-configured signatures with a little bit of color, etc. are very important. Because a lot of times when you've sent a client a mail, those things catch the eye for further, somebody to come back to you. And of course, when you write emails, formal language, addressed correctly, etc., etc. These are going forward that we will talk about when we talk about a session on how to communicate, how to write letters, etc. And as a firm, what do you think your standard templates to be? So the standard templates are very useful for two reasons. One is you've set them all. So for you to actually propose to a client, you just tell your article assistant, look, I want this engagement letter written. So the article fills up everything and comes back to you. You only put in some background, terms of reference change, etc. And you fill up the fee. Your time to market is very, very quick. Similarly, your data request letters. Today, how many of us, when we do a statutory audit, you start with a data request letter? If it's an internal audit, you start with a data request letter. So it'd be very good to have these standard preambles that you create. So just say greetings from XYZ and Co. Kindly provide this information, etc. Similarly, your report formats can get standardized. Your fee reminders. So how many of us send fee reminders? I try to establish this as a practice in my firm. I say every Friday, anything which is more than 40 days old, we give it as a gentle reminder. And more often, I find that clients have actually missed our invoices. It's not that they don't want to pay, and especially during this COVID. So what do? We attach a PDF of the invoice and send a gentle reminder. Dear sir, madam, please find our bill. It appears that this has not got paid. Kindly pay, and if already paid, please ignore. And normally, as partner, I don't send it from my ID. I send it from some other ID. So make sure that somebody in my office sends it. So when the client, and then the later escalations, you can get involved. But I think it's worked very beautifully because the clients then remember to pay. And if you are registered under an MSME, you may also subtly hint that at the bottom, saying that we are also a registered MSME. So kindly expedite at the earliest. Standard fonts. So a lot of us in practice, each of our article assistants do different fonts. My first engagement my employment was with Ford. And I still remember I had done my articles in a place which was fairly structured. I went to PW, but not as structured as Ford. I still remember one of the first papers that I had done for a boss. So we used to print everything in even the Word documents used to get written in Excel with a border. So I had this gentleman called Rakesh Bharti who was from the US. He actually had a plastic scale in his hand. And then he sat me down and then he showed me and he said, Priya, look at this line. This is not an Arial 10, Arial 11. I think so it's very important. So for example, for all my legal, I use Book Antiqua for my planes, my drafts, etc. Whereas for all our reports, we use Times New Roman 10 or Times New Roman 11. So decide on that, communicate with your article assistants that you want to see everything in a standard font right across the organization. And somehow, as small and medium practitioners, I've always said this, we do a phenomenal amount of work. But somehow when we report, we sort of get a little, whether it's an engagement letter or whether it's a data request letter, it's a huge visual appeal for a client. In fact, they say, right, why do you go very well dressed for an interview? They say in that first 30 seconds of seeing you in an interview, your interviewer has assessed you, whether it's worth carrying on, not carrying on. And I'm told it's just that first 30 seconds. The same reason why people say that, normally I believe you must wear very good footwear. People look at your shoes first and then, assess you. And these are generally things that are said in a more lighter context, but very, very true. So that's the power of these standard fonts, standard templates. Similarly, non-disclosure. So today when you engage with a client, however small he is, I found that these little tidbits help in the positioning. So for example, if a client says, I'm going to send you some data, you tell him, no, sir, please wait. I'll send you an NDA in my standard format. Please share data with me after that. Because you notice that most of your clients themselves are not familiar. And then he builds a perception saying, they must be a very respectable firm. See, they are offering to give me an NDA. These are very small tricks of trade, but they actually help you in your positioning both to win an engagement as well as in determining your fee level. Now, what does an NDA have to be? It's what you write, but they are largely legal. So you can have a very simple 1-page, 2-page NDA that says, I'll treat my data with the same kind of care and caution as if it were my data. And the second thing is, I agree not to share it. Be very careful. Don't subscribe yourself to some liabilities in these NDAs. That's the other thing. So a lot of times these templates are available, but please do moderate these templates before you use them. So these are what I think constitute firm profile and paraphernalia that come along with these firm profiles that you need to be ready with at any point in time. My significant matters of emphasis will be the need to standardize processes across your organization. Now, let me just take you to a small template. So I'm sure most of you have this. So I've made out a very small proposal template. I had done this long back, but I'm sure most of you would have this. So this is like you can autofill it actually and change the design, of course. This design is very archaic. About us, our vision, our services, our approach, our team, and our work. So about us, you introduce the practice, the number of partners, brand strength, what's unique about your firm. Please Google. There are some very nice lines that you can pick up. So for example, in the firm, in my profile, it says, our partners constantly endeavor to push the envelope to develop solutions that put client needs first. You know, it's important you make those good, strong, positive, appealing, inspiring statements when you put your foot forward to win an engagement. And a lot of times we think, oh, people don't see this, they see this. I know where I've got engagements from when we were pitching with people far better than us and bigger than us, simply because we downloaded the MCA data and presented an analysis and said, see, in your internal audit, I will focus on this. Otherwise, they had more standing, they had more experience in the relevant area, etc. Now, you're right what's unique. And another thing is, as SMPs, we are very, very shy. While I speak so much, I am myself very shy when I write this. I keep thinking, oh, am I overstating? But you look at the large firms, they sort of really put their foot forward, hire professionals to do their brochures, etc. Then you go on to what is your vision. Please give your vision. Your vision could be a boutique firm. You can say, I want to be a boutique firm. I want to be reachable to my client. You can say our vision is to be the most respected CA practice in the domains that we service. You want to be innovative. You want to be effective. You want to use contemporary technology. Decide 4 or 5 words in your mind as a theme and decide what you want to write here. And of course, in these times of Corona, people also say cost-effective and value-added manner. So today, whatever proposals we are saying, we are writing one last line. Please note that we are highly willing to work at good fees. We are willing to relook at the fee levels, given these very, very dystopian and pandemic times, and we appreciate that you would need this. In fact, today you must look at cost as a very, very important reason why people would want to change consultants and move towards other players as well. And other services, you can give a short bullet. What all are you going to do? Statutory audit, internal audit, indirect taxes, direct taxes, outsourced assistance, business advisory. And if you notice, all these are just that simple smart art that I have used. Then you go on to describe in each of it, what do you do in each of your services. So today, one important thing, if your client wants one particular word of demerger that he wants you to do, please make sure you go and add that demerger here. Because that's what the client is looking for, and you can actually bold it. Approach, for example, I have said we approach our work in 5 stages: preliminary, planning, delivery, monitoring, and reporting. So that would be one acronym that you can develop for it, a mnemonic. So you can write a few bullets. Everybody is looking for a methodology. Just say, this is my firm methodology. It's called SMART, or it's called Spark, or it's called Perk, or it's called Inspire, or it's called, give it a nice name and say, this is the methodology I use. People like to see this and people like to read it. See, when we do audits, we always say, right, tone at the top. Now, these profiles that you prepare and however good you do it, reflect the tone at the top of the organization. It's what you actually communicate to your client, and it's what you communicate to your people. The team, it's nice to have a photograph of each partner and give a brief about the team. In addition, you might want to say, and don't be shy, if you're a 20-man organization, proudly say, I'm a 20-man organization. If you're a 10-man organization, say, I'm a 10-man organization. There are people today who want to work with 10-man organizations because they believe that you're more reachable than a 200-member company. Doesn't matter. And whoever you are, write their profiles. Say, I have a chartered accountant, I have cost accountants, I have company secretaries. You say, see, today, if you have a friend, if you have a business, you have an associate relationship in Trichy, put that down. Just say that I am fairly networked in my community and I can get work done right across South India. Put that out proudly. It's not important to have an alliance. It's not important to have a network. You are very, very entitled to share fees with other chartered accountants. You may inform the client itself and do it. That doesn't amount to subcontracting. If you're giving a part of the work to somebody, that doesn't really matter. Talk about your branches. I have seen, put a photograph of their offices. See, a lot of people think, okay, in fact, I must tell you this. Some of the best CA offices I have seen are in a place called Kozhikode. You'll be very surprising. Absolutely brilliant. They have such nice office. I mean, put photographs, nothing wrong. In fact, the theme of your entire profile could be with your office photographs in the background. And today, being small does not mean we have not invested in good people or good technology or good offices. Be proud of what you have. Then you end it by saying contact partner name, the firm name, chartered accountant's address, etc. Now, another important thing is, don't send this as a picture. Please send this as a PDF. And in the beginning of the PDF, make sure that your firm's name will be visible when you convert it to a PDF. And again, the advantage of doing a PDF is your client goes right to the end. He can click on your mail ID and send you a mail. So it's like almost like, taking that banana and peeling it and giving it to somebody. And that's exactly the desired effect that you'd want to have. And in all these proposals, I think what I find, profiles, I have found it very, very relevant. I always put myself in the position of a client. I say, okay, if I've got it on WhatsApp, I want to send him a mail. So if it's on PDF, I immediately just go and click in mail. So similarly, you can have a small preamble that you write saying, please revert back at this mail ID. And you please put the mail ID at the end of the email so that they're very encouraged to click and revert back. So today, if you look at all these apps, what do? They make work very easy. Look at the new income tax website. Of course, I keep joking. I don't know how many of you read these Avenger comics, but there's somebody called Hulk and there's somebody called Loki. And Hulk always keeps up beating Loki. So the new tax website does feel like that. But if you forget the pain that we are going to undergo in the next 1 or 2 months, you will find that income tax website being extremely action-oriented. It actually inspires action. Today, if I want to pay TDS on rent, let's say, I just go and pay TDS on rent. And progressively, they've said that even these return filing, etc., a lot of it would be auto-populated. Maybe we won't have to file the quarterly TDS returns. Maybe it'll get auto-populated again, and you may have to click and confirm. So your profile must inspire a call to action. Now, if a client has specifically asked you for internal audit, at the end of it, you may add your internal audit slides. Or in the beginning, you can add it and proceed with this. So with this, I've shown you a very simple profile template. What I think is a client profile template. Now, let me go to the next one. So anyway, all of this I'm going to leave with you. So it really doesn't matter. So the next most important thing that we all need to do. So sometimes you say, okay, why do I need to prepare a proposal? My client has agreed with the fee. He wants me to do this work. There are two very compelling and impelling reasons why you send a proposal. Because you communicate to your client that I am structured, I am a professional, I will work like this only. The second reason why you send a proposal is that a client feels hugely respected when you do it. This is something I've seen, especially with the SME segment. You would have worked with a lot of consultants. Somebody would have prepared his VAT return. He'll come in the evening to the office with some, very shabbily, trying to do some work, etc. He will take the data and go. He will not be available. But today, when you give a client a proposal and address it to his name as, let's say, managing director, even if it's a small company, the kind of respect that it gets you is humongous. Two, the client knows that you're serious and you mean business, which is why you need to have a proposal. Now, I've again put a 9-box matrix. What are the 9 most important things in a proposal? One is the introduction, where you introduce the client first and about the firm. 2 is the background. Why am I doing this engagement? Who and the why of this engagement? Who introduced, etc., etc. You can bring it. For example, your engagement could be your client wants you to do a statutory compliance review for them for all the statutes, 12 statutes that they are covered under. So your engagement detail will be, we have been asked to present a SPR & Co. or whatever is your firm name, XYZ & Co. has been asked to present a proposal to perform a detailed statutory compliance review of XYZ Company Private Limited. This proposal is presented based on the discussions with Mr. So-and-so, CFO of the company. And it sets out our understanding of the engagement prior to our commencement. Then the terms of reference. What will you say in the terms of reference? It's the most important word that needs to feature along with your liability and fee clauses. The terms of reference as agreed with the client are as under. Number 1, what will you do? We need to check compliance of the company with reference to the following laws and regulations, namely income tax, GST, PF, ESI, payment of bonus, Factories Act, etc., etc. And today your client might actually say, don't do full income tax for me, do only 5 things. You'll specify that in the TOR. You'll specify saying they want us to check, let's say, this parameters in their statutory compliances or GST, etc. For example, in GST, your client might say, you only check for me input tax credit. So you must specify the detailed TOR, because when you give a report, it will be addressed only to this TOR. And tomorrow, if your client asks you 4 more questions, you can tell him, no, sir, this was the agreed TOR and this was my proposal. Then your proposal template necessarily needs to talk about your methodology. If it's internal audit, you will say first is understanding of client's business. Second, you will say, I will prepare a detailed audit calendar. Third, you will say in fixed assets, I will cover all this. In inventory, I will cover all this. In bank and cash, I will cover all this. You must give the detailed methodology and step by step so that you're extremely clear. The fourth is confidentiality. Standard clauses. You must have a confidentiality clause, and please get it legally vetted. You have only 2 confidentiality clauses in an engagement letter. But if the client is allowing you access to their system, etc., they might have NDAs, etc., which you may have to sign. Information and assistance. Please put it entirely on the client to say that all information and assistance for this engagement shall be the client responsibility, so that they don't blame you for delays in the engagement. See, and again, today when you give a structured letter like this, the CFO will then give it to the manager of finance and say, boss, this is the letter. Please ensure that you give them the support. Timelines for response. You can say that whenever I'm asking you something, please give it to me at least in 3 days' time. Deliverables are very, very important. Deliverables you will write will be, I will present a statutory compliance tracker indicating whether it is complied or not complied. And for aspects which are not complied, we will issue a detailed report on what is the non-compliance, who is responsible for the non-compliance, by what date will the non-compliance be remedied, and what is the management comment. So a lot of it is just what's in your mind, but please put it down. Don't worry about the language, because a lot of these templates exist already. You just have to, sort of think through this and make it as succinct as possible. The next important thing is your fee. Three things in a fee. Your fee proposal. What is the advance that you want? Again, a lot of us are very shy. 80% of our clients, I don't think we charge in advance. I'm sure it's the same with everybody, but there's nothing wrong in charging in advance. You can ask for a 20% advance. I would strongly recommend you actually ask. It's also a client commitment. 70% on draft report, which is an incremental 50%, and 100% on final report. Take care to ensure that your expenses are given separately. Again, the law firms are extremely meticulous. So you will always find a clerkage charge 5,000 rupees or whatever that comes along with the bill. A lot of us don't. We say, okay, what is this? In fact, I am equally delinquent. A lot of times we pay 1,000 rupees per application to NCLT, but we forget to actually claim a reimbursement. You could be having such kind of issues as well. You could be making these payments for filing, etc. Travel, conveyance, please agree in as many words as possible on what are the reimbursables and how you will take your GST separately. And of course, there is the last part is liability. So a lot of times the client may not have a liability clause in their contract also, in which case you be very proactive. Say my all liabilities under this engagement will be restricted to 25% of the fee or 50% of the fee which has been received. So that way you say, so today you can sleep very peacefully. If there's a failure, okay, boss, I have to pay 25% or 50% of the fee that he has paid me. The next thing is arbitration jurisdiction, very, very important. Don't subscribe yourself to the contract that a client says where the arbitration is at Delhi. But again, you have a problem. It all depends on the size of client that you're handling. If your client is very large and they're registered in Calcutta, it will say that all arbitration jurisdiction, etc. will be in Calcutta. But try and work around this. If you are issuing an engagement letter, you don't need to really talk about arbitration jurisdiction, but just be aware. And today, you just don't know what's coming out. When everything is fine and hunky-dory, there's no problem. But if something blows up, there's a problem. And that's when these engagement letters save you. And the institute has given a standard format of an engagement letter for a statutory audit. So these proposal templates you don't use as an engagement letter or a proposal for statutory audit. For there, you go with the recommended guidance of the institute, which is given it under your relevant essay, which is an engagement letter format with ICOFR and without ICOFR. Now I'll show you a few proposal templates. I can add in a lot more, whatever I have. I will definitely do that. So for example, I'm opening an internal audit proposal template. So I've done it in that format where I can refresh the data. That's optional though. So this is how a proposal template actually looks. I hope it's visible. If it's not, somebody can call me. So executive summary. What's your executive summary? So I'd like to give an executive summary. And this is very important. So you can just say this is an old client. So we appreciate the context and relevance of this engagement to so-and-so, and would bring relevant experience and expertise to enable robust engagement definition and completion. Organization overview. What is that company ABC Limited? About XYZ, which is your firm. What is the internal audit? I told you, right? You will write something about the methodology, etc. So I've called it as internal audit function. This is not a session on internal audit, but this is what you would write as a preamble on what work is done. What is my terms of reference? I told you there, you must have it. We will cover all this in the internal audit. Methodology. I am saying I'm going to have a risk-based internal audit approach. I will perform this. The audit frequency will be quarterly. Then I told you, right? Whatever is your terms of reference, it should be given in detail. You please write here. In fixed assets, I will check this. In cash and bank, I will check this. In loans and advances, I will check this, etc. So the proposal template runs through. This is your proposal. Finally, if it gets approved, you will have two bottom tables. Proposed by, accepted by. The same thing becomes an engagement letter. So confidentiality, I had kept it very brief. I said this is all I will put. So each one can have a different confidentiality table depending on this. And at the end of this, what will you say? You will say, if you want to have your liability restriction, you will say, okay, liability, all liability shall be limited to the extent of 20% of your fees. Then here you will have two tables. You will say proposed by so and so for the company XYZ. Your client basically signs this, accepted by so and so or ABC Limited. And then it gets dated and it's done. So that's how you basically finish. See, if you have this, you can customize a proposal. Now let's look at some other proposal. We spoke about a statutory compliance review. So essentials of a proposal would be pretty much be the same thing. So executive summary, background. I had styled it slightly differently because it's boring to see the same kind of templates. So this was a slightly different template in a different font. But whatever I spoke about, I had just done a memo template. Same thing, timing, fees, confidentiality, etc. So this is going back to my PPT. These are your essentials of a proposal template, plus or minus. Even if your client has given you a service order, please ensure that you have an engagement letter so that there is no ambiguity. We come to the third and the best part of today, or whatever I hope will be very relevant. So I'd like to tell you a small story. This is, I think, way back in 2001 or 2, and it was a client for whom I had proposed a customer account reconciliation for some 100 accounts across the country. And this was my first engagement with the client, or the second. And I used to work with a bunch of 4 kids who had finished their articles. And then they were waiting to write their final, and they were with me. So I had gone up to this gentleman. I still remember his name. His name was Rahul Swarup, and he was a techie. So I said, sir, what should I charge? So Rahul looked at me and said, Priya, I want to tell you 3 things: good, fast, and cheap. And it's only today that I actually found this little picture. So it's a very simple thumb rule when you're talking about fees. It can be good and cheap, but it will not be fast. If it's good and fast, the service can't be cheap. If it's cheap and fast, your service can't be good. And this is something that a client needs to appreciate. You can't come in on 20th September and say, please file my return on 30th September and expect it to be good, fast, and cheap. So today, if I get an engagement like that, I would go out and take one CA from the market and say, please look at this client carefully. And that obviously means a larger level of fee. I would like to take the assistance of somebody. Now, having said that, what are my pillars of a professional fee? It obviously, a fee should be in such a manner that it makes me profitable. And I'd like to put that as number 1, because a better profitability means you can invest more in your firm. And it means you can deliver better to your client and to your employees. And when you deliver better to your client and your employees, it will bring in more work. And more work will mean more fees. And it's a juggernaut that just keeps rolling, and it's critical. 2, it's very important to maintain quality. So they say, right, if you give peanuts, you get something. But I don't even want to go into this comparison. And I think we've, as a profession, suffered enough comparisons on watchdogs, bloodhounds, etc. But I think at the core of it, we must be able to deliver high quality. And it's not very difficult to do this fee negotiation. When you talk to a client, you should say, sir, you should be happy, I should also be happy, and hence this fee level. And I keep talking about this so extensively because I do a lot of programs with small and medium branches, and they always keep come back and saying the client is not willing to pay. So I'm saying if I can up my standard and do a better proposal, a better profile, and a better visibility, then it should follow automatically. The third is risk. So today I'm taking, so for example, I keep talking about valuation specially. I know a lot of chartered accountants who would price, let's say, X for a valuation. You get one query from RBI, you'll have to work on it for 4 days and you've never budgeted for it. And a lot of these valuation queries do come. In fact, I have a very sensible partner who says, Priya, this you should not agree like this because there is a problem. So, it's important to understand that there could be a risk. Today, if you're doing a concurrent audit, there is a risk. Some borrower fails somewhere, you get a letter. How do you approach this? The fourth is contingency. Today, I have planned for a certain fee. He says, okay, you do this for, let's say, 40,000 rupees for me. I also say, okay, 40,000. Tomorrow, I don't have, unless I get into the work, I really can't even dimension it. So my fee should also provide for a certain bit of contingency in terms of time or cost overrun. So I may have to travel somewhere, which is why you keep your OPE always separate. So what are my building blocks of fees? One is, of course, my opportunity cost. Again, to the practicing fraternity, I keep saying this. It's okay sometimes not to be doing anything and listening to a webinar or a CPE program than to actually do something for a low cost and exposing yourself to a risk. Two is how many of us factor in. So there is an opportunity cost of, if you were not in practice, you would be doing something else. And all of us, I must tell you, are extremely bright. It's not that if we don't do this, we will not get something. Maybe our time to get, to start reaping the rewards may take some time. But I'm very, very confident even somebody who's starting today, in about 10 years time, figures out how to practice and he started, sort of recovering. Two is overheads. How many of us go back to a client and say, look, I have overheads. Let me give you a very small example. You file a client's income tax return. I've seen firms which have 20 files for a client and it occupies space. The cost of record retention. How many of us factor all this? You do statutory audit. I have 2 large bundles for every client. Where do I store it? There is an effort. So it's not just your non-hidden overheads which are important. It's even your hidden overheads like your document storage. Today you hired some cloud space. You're putting that thing there. You are paying 30,000-40,000 rupees. Please calculate all that. Third is chargeable hours. See, all of us can't work 365 days and 24 hours. It doesn't work. So first of all, you assume a 5-day working week. But for me also, I will have idle time because all my clients come to me in August, September. So I have a lean season. So your chargeable hours become very important. The fourth, so today I can have only 250 into 8 hours per day into 70%, because 30% of my time as a chartered accountant, I have to learn. See, either you're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and trying to catch up. And today with everything flowing on WhatsApp, you spend a lot of time learning on WhatsApp. In fact, WhatsApp should be upgraded. So the firm standing is also very important. So if you're a very young firm, you can't command a premium. But the kind of respectability today, if you are giving a report to a bank and the bank says, oh, okay, they've given this report. I think that's a firm standing issue that you have to factor into your fees, because I've also figured this out. When you're very small, you're very profitable. When you're very large, also you're reasonably profitable because it just keeps rolling in and you keep your annuities work. But a lot of us in our mid-size, we find it very difficult to be profitable because there are people leaving, you'll have to replace, there is a training time, etc. So your firm standing also needs to get built in. Now, the biggest challenge today is your statutory mandates, your L1 issues. With L1 issues, it's going to be very, very difficult. So it's again a conscious choice on whether you want to pitch where there are integrated technical and commercial bids. We have refused. We say if it's an integrated bid, we don't even want to quote. A risk premium. Today, if you're signing something, it is risk. You need to have a risk premium because you need to take so much more safeguards, how you maintain your working papers. In fact, the standard on auditing gives you 2 months time to prepare your working papers. So you explain all that to your client. Say, sir, after I finish your engagement, I have to sign every working paper. I have to store it. I am spending time. One time or repeat engagements. See, here you have to be very careful. So when the first GST audit came, we also subscribed to certain large GST audit engagements. We thought, okay, the client will mature. You have to be very careful. Don't take that one time and repeat call. You try and engage each client on a standalone basis for that 1 year. Other than statutory audits, of course, where there is a 5-year period, so you have some time to recover. But there also, I will be very, very cautious today. I would want to look at each engagement being profitable, or at least each client being profitable. Competition is another big factor. Today, everybody is willing to, sort of pitch in and compete. And again, it's a call that you take. If somebody wants to do whatever you're trying to do at 30%, let the client go to them. You have to just let go unless you believe this is very important for you. And of course, there is this huge thing of client affordability. So these are softer calls that you take, value added services. So I come to it today. When you're trying to do pricing for a client, there are three types of pricing. One is called input pricing. Typically, where do I do input pricing? In something like data entry. So even that's a wrong example. And input pricing is where I actually put time in. So today, if your client wants you to review 20,000 HR files, there is a standard checklist. So you say my staff will take 40 minutes per file. So my staff charge out cost is so much. So this is my total cost. That is input pricing based on the time that you've input into the engagement. Sometimes you can do it as output pricing. A client will tell you, okay, you please get me that bank loan closed. I'll pay you 3 lakhs. Again, there you can't charge a percentage because the institute bars it. You can charge a flat fee for assisting or preparing an information memorandum and your CMA analysis. That's an output pricing where the client says, I will pay you on output, but it cannot be a fixed and a variable because that will amount to profit sharing. Third is value added pricing. Today you tell your client, okay, your client says, okay, I want to buy this asset from this company. So you say, okay, boss, you buy it. How much is your stamp duty? He says, I'm in Karnataka. So my buying is 6% is my stamp duty. You go back to your client, and the most important thing is you tell your client, can I give you a proposal to better this 6% legally? And in all this, I come back to it, there is a professional ethics angle involved. So the client says, okay, give me a proposal. So then you come back and tell your client, why are you looking at buying it like this? Can you explore a scheme of demerger? If it's demerger, the stamp duty rates are lesser, maybe 2%, 3%, 4%. So when you have added tremendous value to a client, or you're doing a cost optimization engagement, again, unfortunately, we cannot charge on variable basis, but that's what the Bostons of the world do. They say, give me your entire supplier base, I will give you 30% saving, 10% saving, etc. That's value added pricing. So these are your building blocks of pricing that you constantly need to keep looking at this template and say, okay, am I, where am I? And this is almost invariably a combination of this which drives your price. So today, let me walk you through a very simple fee calculator. So I have a fee template guide which I've done in Excel. I use this very dedicatedly. The rest of my office may not or may be using it. But this is a very simple thing. Just go through the first and second pages, which are academic. And very interestingly, this was a document I wrote in 2015, and it's still very relevant. This is a small guide I have given you on how to prepare this template. But we can skip the guide and I can tell you what to do. It's very simple. You first go and write the names. Put what you believe should be a basic salary cost. Assume 250 working days per annum. Okay, that's all. You first fill up only the salary. So let's say this is a practice where I feel the partner should at least get a salary of 97 lakhs. Then you come to that year's amount of overheads, your rent. So I have assumed a very mid-sized practice. So I have 14 employees in my practice. I have a good, nice, smart office. This is my electricity, telephone, internet, mobile, salary, staff welfare, travel. This is marketing and general travel. Let's say, I can even reduce this. Conveyance, depreciation, and others. I have an overhead of 46. So in the minimum, I need to recover this across my engagements, correct? For me to be a profitable practice. Minimum, I need to recover this. At least my salary should come. And please remember, your salary is not your profit. Your salary is for being there in the firm as a partner. The profit comes as your being a partner. So now when you fill up your overheads, I have salary cost, I have overhead cost. Overheads as a percentage of salary is 47%. And that's a simple formula. So to my salary, I have to mark up 47%, which I mark up right through for every person. Now, I have idle time, right? Today, it's also even more important. So, obviously, all of us work to minimize our idle time. See, there is no science to this and there is no art to this, and it's a mix of science and art. But it will broadly tell you whether you're in some right direction. So, I put an idle time estimate, and then I work out my charge out as my base cost and my overheads and my idle time. I need to recover so much. Now, I worked this out, I've kept it in my mind. Now I go to a particular engagement. Somebody wants you to do a cost reduction engagement for them. So I have decided, these are all your numbers only. I will say for an engagement of this type, my total brain is involved, my past work is involved. I know exactly where my client can get a cheaper source of cotton or steel or whatever has to be bought. So I will say for this engagement, I know my client is going to be benefited. I will do a premium pricing. So it's going to take me 6 to 6 man days. It's going to take A partner 6 man days, B, C, D, E, F, everything. I come to 6 to 6 man days. My rate per man day is nothing but a lookup from my previous sheet. My partner's charge out should be at least 25,000 a day. And don't even get bogged down by these numbers. These are all very reasonable because your charge out rate per hour is very small. It is 3,000 rupees an hour is what it comes. So 11 lakhs will be the cost of this engagement. Your client will easily get benefited by 30, 40 lakhs, and how you position it to your client is your problem. So let's say I'm doing a statutory audit. Okay, so this is for me a medium complexity engagement. Or let's say it's a very simple, straightforward statutory audit, very good client, I have no problem. And my number of mandates in this engagement, I have to finish it, let's say, incidentally, this 66 and this 66 need not tally. So you are required to do 2 days of your time as the partner or 1 day of your time as the partner. Your second partner will put in 2 days. Your paid assistant will put in 6 days for this audit. And you have 2 article assistants. So you must recover at least 1 lakh in a statutory audit. A simple statutory audit, why I believe you should recover 1 lakh. Absolutely possible, no? See, your schedule 3 is there, your audit is there. So when you go and tell a client, look, I need to get paid 1 lakh, you don't have to share all this with him. But you can tell him, sir, my salary cost itself should be at least 36 lakhs. So from there you start, sir. They don't like to see these kind of numbers because they're not used to it, but this is what I believe. Whereas if you feel this is a slightly complicated audit, your premiums can be higher. So this is how you actually work on a template. And if any of you have any queries, you can offline come and I can explain this. But it's an extremely simple template and you can play with it. So I come to the last slide now, which is going back to it. So we're going to have a series of webinars actually. The first is on what we spoke about today. The second is what we're going to speak about next. Now, I came up with this primarily because of this present climatic pandemic conditions, where I thought these will become very important. I'm actually in the process of identifying both the speaker and the technology because I want to only introduce things which are free to members. So, for example, today you have Google Drives which are free, Dropbox is free. I'm sure there are other solutions which are free. So I'm trying to find a speaker who can expose us to 2-3 solutions. For example, convening virtual meetings, Zoom up to a certain level is free. I think Zoho is free. You have freeware. Similarly, remote desktop access. I'm told any desk, we keep using that. I just want, and I have no connections to any of these, but I use all of them. And similarly, data backup. There are, I'm told, storage solutions where you can go and keep your backup on the cloud and it's freeware. So this is what we'll discuss next, and basics of IT security. See, today again, what is my basic? Do I at least have system? So we're going to do a very basic thing on IT general controls for audit firms. my screensaver password, my tally password protection. Where am I keeping my passwords? Am I having an information technology security session for my articles? One of my articles on the long back had showed me one file. I said, so where did you get this file from? She said, Madam, article assistant and another firm gave it to me. And it was the entire Schedule 3 accounts of another firm, of another client. I said, why did she share it with you? She said, no, I wanted a template for Schedule 3, so she sent it to me. Sometimes we should tell our article assistants, it's not, see, as a firm, if you feel, see, in my firm, we say, okay, proposal template and all, we're not too, we are fine with sharing. But if you feel they should not even share report formats, etc., then how do you explain to your article assistant in a manner that doesn't hurt them? Because all these kids also get very strong saying, oh, they're being selfish. No, we're not being selfish. It's got an IT security angle to it. It's client data. So this is something we're going to talk about. Do we need our articles to sign small confidentiality declarations? I think yes. Because in the current schema that the institute prescribes, we don't take confidentiality declarations from articles. So I think this is very important. Similarly, when your article is resigning or finishing the 3 years and going, am I getting a declaration that no data will be used or shared? Similarly, when employees quit us, a lot of times I've noticed that our files have actually gone somewhere else. How do I protect myself? See, finally, it's personal ethics. I've always come back to it. But nothing stops me from building deterrence. I should tell an employee who's leaving, see, we have built a lot of proprietary, report formats, etc. Please be aware that if I find that you have shared with this, you're exposed to litigation. I don't think it's wrong to say that, especially for us who spend a lot of personal time developing all this. So coming back to this, the entire focus has been on profitability, very, very high quality, client satisfaction, and a sense of pride in what we do. And I think in all the structuring that we are trying to do in terms of templates, fonts, formats, color, high quality, we hope to instill a sense of pride, both in ourselves and with the larger communities of article students, of employees and clients whom we service. So in fact, initially I used to print my reports on this normal paper. And then I said, okay, what's the big deal? One bond sheet costs ₹1. So we started printing on this light cream bond sheets. And it has a completely different look and feel when you do that. So you invest in these numbered folders. So they cost about $100, let's say. But the kind of client satisfaction it gives is huge. And I think these are very small things that we've tried and tested and it worked. I hope you enjoyed this presentation as much as I enjoyed preparing this. For me, it's been one of my most loved presentations till date. So thank you very, very much. So when I'm back on the video and do I have any questions? Excellent point. TJS is also Mr. Srinivasan from Tirupur. Confidentiality declaration from our staff articles will safeguard us if they leave office. Yes, they will, sir. Most of these confidentiality undertakings survive the period of employment. If it's non-disclosure, it's non-disclosure for life. There is no change. You just need to build in. You have to say, even if I find that you've shared this 5 years down the line, I have a legal recourse. Dropbox is free only up to 2 GB. Yes, sir. So I do something very different. So I take one paid Dropbox, but the rest of them, we give them 2 GB. They can download for free. Once they finish that engagement, we ask them to delete it from their Dropbox so you can continue to use it. I am personally a big fan of Dropbox, although it's expensive. But I'm sure but the rest of my office uses some other drive, etc. But for me, I like to see like an Explorer format. Very good suggestion, Ashok Jiu, sir. So what he's saying is each of your staff can have a Dropbox. Up to 2 GB, it's free. So today you can put one client they are working on in their Dropbox, share it for them. They can finish their work. And once it gets synced to your Dropbox, you can delete it from theirs. They can delete it. So they will always be working only on 2 GB of data. But one Dropbox, I think it costs about 6,000 or something. It's 500 rupees a month. Again, it's a professional call. Very good pitch kit from Mr. Deepak. What do we do if the fee is not agreed and we tend to lower our price? See, that's a professional call. So you'll get better and better at this. Practice makes perfect. And maybe, I said this previously also. I'll try and get a workshop on negotiation skills for chartered accountants. So there are some fundamentals people keep joking about. So you never do it before lunch because your client is hungry and you're also hungry. So you try and keep it post lunch when your client is relaxed. You don't do it at a moment of stress. Like, for example, he's got a reporting deadline on 31st. You don't go and tell him, I want to talk about fees on 30th. You position it correctly. But these are, strategies. You start by talking about the weather, about the pandemic and everything, and then you come to the fees. So, yeah. So with regard to minimum prescribed fees by ICAI, possibility of charging fees on that basis is minimal. I personally feel each and every branch of ICAI should be able to fix the prescribed fees. So that's a very long call, sir, because unless it's a very informal arrangement within the branch members, this is not something ICAI can get into. But I think I'm told one very senior member of the profession had once said, give up half your clients where there is a fee issue and you will find that your income actually doubles. So a very famous past president, I don't want to mention the name because I don't know if it was him, but I've heard this in many forums. So will this session be shared for future viewing? Of course, I've just learned how to record, so I will do it. ICAI also has an arrangement for fidelity insurance. So this is another thing, but currently I don't know what the premiums are, but this will again be covered in a later webinar where we'll talk about professional safeguards. What do you do in terms of your own safeguards? One of which is the insurance part. Logic for 70% missed it. What was the logic for 70%? 1 minute, let me just go back to it. Where was the 70%? That's because your idle time is 30%. So that must be the logic. Or yeah, the only place where I can think of a 70% was because of your idle time. So you're supposed to do your CPE programs, etc., etc. So that's what it is. If there's some other 70%, we can come. You can page me personally. Oh, sorry, just slides down. How to maintain the fee if your office is in an area where everyone else, that is, the fee question is not complete. So you set a standard for yourself. So you've come into practice because you want to practice. You set a standard for yourself and you wait there and say, I will do this at my pace and I'll do it well. And another thing I think today is this pandemic, while it has closed worlds, it has opened minds. Today, somebody sitting in Bangalore or Bombay will be willing to work with somebody in Erode, Salem, Coimbatore, or Tirupur if you're competent, because everybody now, Zoom and virtual meetings are your order of the day, whether it's your Zoom or Zoho or whatever. We have multiple platforms, WebEx. I think clients will truly look for quality today and cost rather than geographical proximity. Of course, I will be sharing this. So I'll do two things. For those of you who are already in the WhatsApp groups, I'll put it in the WhatsApp groups. But this time alone, I realize it's a lot of content. I'll send a personal mail to all those who've registered. What can be some initiatives for business development? So as part of my pack today, I'm also sharing with you one more screen, one more file. I'll show that to you. So at some point in time in the past, I attempted to make a budget for my firm. So I created one service lines for CAs. So what all is my institute permitted service? So I had bucketed it under various headings. So I'll share this with you. So partnership registration, these are a bunch of some 103 services that I thought you could do, and you can add. I mean, this is just a tentative list. You can start putting these pricing, and for youngsters, it's a very good way to start. Today, I will say I want to do at least 5 partnership registrations this year. I will go find the market for it. I will charge 5,000 rupees. I will charge 50,000 rupees. So you can actually go and make your budget and see how to reach it. So today, when you're talking to somebody who's in a firm, you can tell them, sir, if somebody wants to incorporate a partnership, I'm very happy to help. So that's my answer to your question. So I'll be sharing a list of services that CAs can do. So that's your initiative for business development. You can go and find the market. Priyanka is the same thing. With respect to engagement letter, is it required to obtain an engagement letter before commencement of statutory audit or one EL for 5-year term of appointment? I would recommend an annual EL. Because in an engagement letter, you're setting out the terms of reference. And the most important thing is, compared to last year, your client may have one more business unit this year. Some things would have changed. Why do you want to do this? Take it every year. But you can have a preamble that says we were appointed for a 5-year term. This engagement letter renews our terms of engagement, which are stated as below, and you keep running it down. Now, any restriction by our institute for any undercut of fees, I'm not really sure. This is huge professional ethics, but I will revert back on this question and come back to you. But look at it this way. I mean, pandemic scale. I mean, it's if the client was paying an 80 lakh audit fee, there's nothing that I should charge 80 lakhs. But please to go through the professional ethics. Your presentation gives an immense strength for a member in industry to come into practice. Please welcome. And just on a very personal note, it's very nice to be your own boss. There are, of course, very stressful moments, like 10-15 days in a year you can't sleep. But yeah, I mean, if you have this attached detachment, it really helps. And I like practice just for one thing, because I'm constantly learning. And I don't think in the industry I would have learned half as much. Two, I think the diversity of people that you meet in practice makes you makes just your life far more exciting. I mean, I've had difficult clients to very nice clients and clients who become friends for life. It's a huge learning opportunity, and it's a phenomenal sense of accomplishment to be an entrepreneur, however small you are. And it's must hasten to add that, inspired by me, my spouse quit and started out on his own. So, how to venture into fields where we were not working during our articleship? How do you approach clients? Okay, so this is like the nail on the head. I never did income tax until today. I'm very scared. I mean, for the first time, I opened this portal sometime last year and I did some filing. But today, you have the Google University, so you can start. And I'm sure ICA also has a lot of learning. So you have to spend that time. And another very nice thing I see about this fraternity is the amount of knowledge sharing that's happening of late. Today, I can take the liberty of calling a very senior chartered accountant on insolvency, for example, and I have no bones about mentioning the name. It's called Mr. RVK. Whenever I have a doubt, and it could be very core to my own earning, he would guide me and say, no, Priya, don't do this, structure it like this, etc., etc. And it's been so unconditional. And a lot of the seniors and everybody today in the profession wants to share, and nobody wants your fee. So I think it's pretty simple. So if you want something in company law, I could possibly, I may not know anything about income tax, but anything else, we're quite free to share. And I think that's a great start point today. So you can get into this. And how do you approach clients? You start with a profile. A lot of times somebody comes to me and says, madam, I've got this transfer pricing, I don't know how to do. So I send them 5 contacts on WhatsApp and say, try talking to them, they'll do it. Because I don't know how to do it, but they might help you. And one guy actually wrote back to say he got guidance. So start somewhere, you learn on the way. It's just that you spend a little more time on those engagements. When we want to introduce a new concept, thank you, Mr. Raghavendra, for some compliments, and just to acknowledge Mr. Kumaravelu, Mr. Anil Kumar, CA Krishnamurthy Rao, when we want to introduce a new concept of work to a client, it is difficult to convince the client on fees. Is there a best way? I think you should do a workshop. And see, another thing is it's again just strategy. Be very peripheral first. Engage with him on what they like. Do a training program for their staff. Say this is how we're planning to work in future. Show him the number of changes that have happened. Send him the NAFRA report, which is a public document. Tell him the kind of risks you are exposed to. It's the client has to learn. See, it's something like this. When a client goes to a hospital and he goes to a star hospital, they don't really mind paying it. But when it comes to a professional, and I find that even the legal community does not have this fee challenge as much as we do. The lawyers, I think charge better. I mean, that's my personal perception, but I could be wrong. So I think it's only a matter of positioning. The best way is to see. The other thing is we don't engage with clients. We meet them only August, September. No, I think every quarter have a schedule. Ensure that you go meet the client or at least call him or have a, now that you have a virtual presence. Another very good thing will be to do training programs for your members. See, for example, in this portal that I use, nobody knows who else is attending. In that sense, I can, it's only the chat that's visible, etc. So you can even have multiple clients in a web platform where you're training them on something. A lot of people are willing to speak. In fact, I have spoken for another firm's clients, and nobody is really, we look at it rather, so try and get good speakers to engage with them, etc. Might help. How will I be informed about your future webinars? Do you have a page to follow? I don't have a page to follow, but I do have a WhatsApp group where you can just come in. I'll send you something. But however you knew about this webinar, I'm sure the same channel, if you've received a mail, will work. But I'll try and I'll send you something separately, Mr. Kalyan Chakravarti. In non-metropolitan cities, many clients are attached to very old firms for generations. As a new person for the practice, can we take other non-conventional practice? Yeah, I think non-conventional practice is the way to go. See, but today there are also other issues that are coming up now. There is something called as a familiarity threat, which is a threat to independence. So very soon you will start seeing a little bit of churn as well in the market, but how long that will take, we don't know. But that familiarity threat was one of the biggest reasons why the Companies Act introduced rotation, 5 years and 10 years for certain classes of companies. So don't know how this would come in, but yeah, the best thing is to stick to non-traditional areas of practice, which are turning out in a big way. In that, I want to make a special mention, especially in the smaller towns and cities, small and medium practice, advisory and consulting. In fact, we have a very good speaker called Krishnan who's speaking on 22nd on opportunities for CS in the SME consulting space. He's one of those who's found huge success in that, and he's willing to share his experience. So Krishnan would be addressing, and I'd like to invite you, and I'm particularly also very interested. So there's your client has 2-3 crores to invest. So your audit client, you can't advise. You have to be a little careful, but largely there is a huge market there. He says, I have 3 crores. Can I go buy some company? There are lots of companies which are coming on insolvency that you can possibly go buy. Is there any easy way for fee follow-up software, etc.? So I do something very simple. I have an Excel spreadsheet, which is basically, as we enter into Tally, we enter into Excel also. And once I take a download from Tally to Excel, I mark out paid and unpaid. And in this Excel template, I also have the mail IDs configured. So you can just go and select only those and send it in BCC saying the fee is paid. But there are plenty of, so for example, if you go into these things like Zoho Books, etc., I'm told you can do automatic reminders. I don't use them. I follow something very simple in Excel. In fact, if you're a reasonably small sized practice, I have configured my invoices itself to be printed in Excel. I can share that template as well. That's really useful. I'll try and share it. For one part of my insolvency work, I just keep it in Excel. So that's the easiest. Yeah, thank you, Mr. TRL. Mr. Raghavendra, if you're interested, you can message me privately. I'll send you that sheet. Fee structure template, good one. Though we do it on approximate, yeah, better to follow a sheet like this. Yes, there's some science to it. I'll share the link of the WhatsApp group. Kritika, just send me a message, or I'll send it by mail tomorrow. What is the future of banks? Banks will be there because they have to lend, but there's a lot of consolidation happening. There's this huge bad loans bank which is going to be done. But there's also a lot of tightening. So I think banks are going to be better managed, hopefully. So once they clear out everything and move it to a bad loan bank. Another very interesting thing I've always also been seeing is a lot of Chinese investments in India. That's something to watch out for, and I'm not so sure about the banking sector also. So they're in education now, coming into Byju's, etc., is what I read. So I'm a newbie in practice. How to benchmark the fees I need to charge? There are guidance, but they are bare minimum. No, guidance from ICI is very high levels of fees. I'll show you the guidance before we close the webinar. Can you please guide on this? So, see, set yourself. So, if you had gone to work, you would have made 8 to 10 lakhs per annum, let's say for a start, or 6 to 10 lakhs. I think it's okay to discount it a little bit and say, look, this year I need to take home at least 6.5 lakhs, and you work towards that. For a newbie in practice, not being a firm, that's the way you would start. So, for example, the first year I did 5 lakhs. At that time, my salary was also at that about 3.5, 4 lakhs. But honestly, I did not have to run for it. It depends on how. So, second year I grew to some 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs, and the third year it was 24. So that way you'll grow. You'll figure out your level. But as a newbie in practice, you should get at least 70% or 60% of what you got in, what you'd have got if you'd gone to industry. And a lot of this comes even from getting subcontracted work. So, for example, you can go to a larger firm and offer to do engagements for them. So, for a newbie in practice, that's a good idea. See, if you have a very strong client connect, you hit the client directly. Never do subcontracting. But if you don't have a strong client connect to get you work from day one, you go to the larger firms and tell them that I'll assist you in work. So 50% of your time you spend to work with these large firms, and you'll also learn something in the process and you work for them. Then 50% of the time you market, you will get some work which will keep you busy for 20% of the time. And for a newbie in practice, when I quit my job, my boss told me only one thing. He said, Priya, you be very clear. Either you have to be out on the road looking for work, out on the road. He says you have to go meet people, or you have to be sitting in a client's office or your office doing work. Don't do anything other than this as the third element, saying I'll watch. No, it doesn't work. And I've taken this very seriously to heart from day one. And another thing I found is that your first 2 engagements, if you deliver exemplarily well, your work just comes by references. You don't even have to go look for it. Share services of CAs through WhatsApp. I showed you this Excel spreadsheet. I'll definitely finish it. Please throw some light on finding the best partners. Okay. The best partners are the only ones which lock up when you're doing your articles. Other than that, everything else is a created partnership. You're doing your articles, you have a senior, you have a junior, you have a batchmate, and you say, hey, come, let's start a practice. They are the most valuable. And then you start work. On the first day in your office, you're sitting in front of 3 clean desks and you have no work to do. Those kind of bonds are unbreakable and they're very different. Anything else is not an optimal partnership, but how do you find partners? People from similar backgrounds make for good partners. People from your own firm, people through very known references, people who do very completely different kind of work that you do. So my partnership, it was very easy for me because I was doing only internal audits and risk-based work. Then there's somebody who had done no internal audits and she did only stats. She had done a lot of statutory with a large firm. So when she came in, it was very easy for me. I said, okay, you do this. Then we had my own junior who sort of came up, and then I said, okay, I will not do this, so you do risk, I do corporate loss. Then we had a 4th partner who did only foreign trade policy, so then we found somebody who does a little bit of international taxation. So for us, we never had to, it's very easy to get that kind of a mix. So this is a good way of finding partners. And another very interesting lesson in partnership is this. You know where you are. And you always have to believe in that larger share of pie. And if there is somebody who can speak about this, I think it's me. Because I actually took off 4 years from work, but I still got paid for being there as a partner. Because you realize that when more people come in, initially there's some stress on how much each one takes, but be very giving with the first pass when you start. And for the first 3, 4, 5 months, even if one of your partners is taking a fixed salary, give him or her that time to settle down. And fundamentally, I found that CAs by themselves, I've not met anybody who's very hung up. People realize their responsibility, but give their partnership time for it to bake and evolve into a cake. It doesn't happen very easily. And you just have to trust implicitly. But you need to have your controls. You can't be in a partnership and do personal billing. That's one. And the second thing is, once you're in a partnership, you bring everything to the firm, but how you share is again each individual. So one of us might decide, oh, he's building a house this year, may need more. Just give and take. How do you do client prospecting without attracting solicitation? Are blind calls feasible? No, they're not feasible. You can't do blind calls. But you can go through references. If you have a client, you can tell him, why don't you refer others to me? That's perfectly possible because it's the client who's referring, and then you go for that. You can't do a cold call. The other thing I also figured out is all of us keep thinking of these new clients, but you find that even your existing clients are not fully mined because you've not met them. By mind, I mean MINED. Your existing client has the potential to give you 200% more work, provided it's not a statutory audit client. So that's one way out. The second way out is for firms to come together. So 5, 6 firms come together and say, okay, your statutory audits, can you refer to me for internal audits at least? Whether the client moves to me or not is a different issue. So you can build a market like that within 10 firms in a sort of an alliance structure. Again, I'm not using the term alliance formally, I'm just using it informally. The fee recommended by CA Institute is having disparity with actual, but one good thing is it's a reasonably good level of fee. Thanks, Kritika, for the endorsement. Mr. Ramachandran was speaking about the parity. Bhagyarani says it's difficult to raise the price. So I'm sure all that I have said, some amount of art of negotiation, some amount of correct timing, some amount of value-added services. See, a lot of times we don't talk about the good work that we do. How many of us, after you finish an engagement, do a presentation for the client? How many of us use graphs? I think we need to put in more on presentation, and then it'll automatically move the fee to a different level. Okay, so your client's business is decreasing. That does not mean your fee has to decrease because your work as an auditor is more or less the same. See, the amount of transaction audit that we do is not very high, so it's important. So that's from Bhagyarani. Any vendor or website for books on laws at a good discount? I don't know, but I can check this out. I'm sure there must be. Thank you, Mr. Shankaran, for the compliment. Thanks for sharing this and being open. I have a doubt whether I should host this, but yeah. Does ICA have a template for an NDA for an article or employee? We have the standard NDA templates. It's just that your opening citation will be different. It'll say between client and service provider. Instead, it can say principal and article trainee. I'm not too sure. I've not read anything recently. But it's not wrong for you to insist on one more NDA. That's perfectly between you and your article. Does ICA have a document for right of use of a digital signature authorization on behalf of the client used by article staff? No. I don't even think you can share your DSC. So at best, what I do is I stand next to that person and say, okay, put it, insert and affix and give it to me. Ideally, digital signatures are like your signature. It's like saying an article can put my sign the way I sign. No, not allowed. I don't think so. Unless I've understood the query very wrongly, but I think a digital signature is very sacrosanct. Don't lend it out to anybody. So similarly, one thing that scares me is a lot of firms have these directors' digital signatures and all. Please be a little careful with all this. Nice webcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Anand. And the previous question was from Mr. Rahul. Sangeet, thank you. How to charge fees for consultancy like a doctor? I believe half our day goes off in WhatsApp consulting or on-call consulting. Okay. I must share this anecdote with you. So there was somebody who's CFO of a division in a large company. He got into a lift with a lawyer, asked a question. This is real life. Huh? I'm not exaggerating. Lawyer got off in the 11th floor in Mumbai. Our friend got off at the 26th floor. By the time our friend had reached the 26th floor, he had got a bill from the lawyer for consulting. So don't do that. So that's exactly what I told you when I referred to this example of stamp duty. Today, if you see an opportunity, you immediately go and tell them, no, no, sir, don't worry. 3%, there is a demerger option. I will give it to you. No. Let people respect that there is a procedure. Write a proposal. Write a proposal. Agree with your client that you can do something for him. Agree on the fee and then engage the work. So Mr. B. Ravi will say very nicely. He'll say, views are free, but opinions are paid for. So it's difficult, but you need to start doing that distancing. See, one very nice thing is, I don't know how, again, this is again a practical strategy, is have one layer between you and your client. It helps. Even this proposal sending, etc., have somebody else send it out. And say, sir, if you want to talk, then sir will talk or madam will talk. It helps. Again, it's very case to case. Yeah, I'm a slightly different person. So my colleagues are different. So it's each one's thing. What are the new areas of practice in a tier 2 city? Like that was the previous one was from Mr. Kumar. So to charge like a doctor, you have to think like a doctor. So you have to say, please come. Please send me a mail. Especially these value-added things like ethical saving of tax, ethical saving of your charges. You have to definitely look at it. So, for example, I know somebody was telling me, I was feeling very bad, Priya. One client wanted to, sell a property to his daughter to transfer it to her. Okay, and he didn't know anything. And he was going to actually pay 10% stamp duty and register it next day. I told him, sir, why are you doing this? You can settle. He said he settled, Priya, but he didn't pay me anything. Exactly what we're talking about. So try and engage formally. New areas of practice in a tier 2 city. So that's what I told you. Everything is opened out now. I had earlier on done a series of webinars, internal audits, ICOFR, writing standard operating procedures, small GST structuring engagements, creating and registering partnerships. Please go through that list of service lines. It will automatically come to you. And another very important thing is your visibility in the marketplace. Now, Hubli must have a Chamber of Commerce equivalent. How many of us are members there? Why are we not going there? In fact, I used to tell this when I was in the council. I used to say for all our CPE meetings, let's get one chief guest or a guest who is an industrialist from that place. If I'm running it in Guntur, let me get somebody from Guntur, let them understand. He will sit through that webinar. He may not understand anything. He will understand that there is so much for us to understand to advise him. So forget about a CPE program. I'm saying you need to be more visible with specifically your trade associations are a must. And initially you must be willing to do it pro bono. Be a knowledge partner. Be a knowledge partner in all their programs. Offer to do their flunk work. You tell them you want to send mass mails, I will help you to send mass mails. I mean, I've done quite a few there. I like doing it. That's the other part. This session could be and my only request is each of you who are here, please go join some trade association as a member. It's very, very important. And you go for those association meetings, that's when you meet people who are your clients. Otherwise, in a normal CPE program, you only keep seeing other chartered accountants. You just need to broaden. Oh, for those in the metros, I mean, the young gen plays golf. I don't. But people find their own ways of trying to build their contacts. So it's like that. Mr. Ramesh Kumar, this session will be very useful for setting up practice. Thank you. Once when I talked to you, you told me to create a profile with reference to skill set. What should I do to improve my skills? So you'll have to finally focus on that one thing, something you'll have to start. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So, yeah. So once when I, yeah. So that's finding your level, right? You need to figure out something that you need to start out. Start with something as simple as income tax filing. Say, I will do it best. I will do it for 500 people this year. I will have a process. I will communicate with my clients. I will invest in a tool. It's a very small thing to start with, but you can do it. So something like that you're very familiar with. Thanks for the presentation. I will be sharing the presentation in the WhatsApp group. That was Mr. Ramanathan, C.A. Ramanathan C. Any software for office management, there's plenty now. So gives me another idea. We can possibly speak to a few people and ask them if they're willing to come and do a demo. Again, I'm trying to encourage only free softwares for a start. I don't want to get into this pricing issue at all. So let me see if I can locate something. Doesn't take much effort. I think there's quite a bit. See, timesheets and all that, you have so much freeware. See, today the choice between free and paid is only if you're willing to. See, I am a person who's willing to work with a little bit of challenges. Meaning, I don't mind using a Google form for one thing, WhatsApp for one thing, mail for another thing. But if you want it all integrated, then you may have to go for a software for office management. But I'm told things like Zoho are very effective because you can create your worksheets, everything in that. We developed our own time sheeting software, so you can develop one yours too. Yeah, the next one, that's Mr. Rajesh, software for office management. Zoho Books is good for fee follow-up and invoicing, and it's free for SMEs if they have a GSTN. Very good. So maybe in my next session, I'll try and check out. I think it's called Zoho Invoice or something. I'm not a Zoho user, but I'll check it and come back. Yeah. If Mr. Ashok GU has knowledge of this and he can do a demo, I'd like to invite him to present in our next webinar. So he can put on the chat if he's available. You can do the demo, sir. So would be useful if you could share the templates. I will share all of them, both by mail and by WhatsApp. Okay, my mobile number, I'll put it on. It's already on chat, but I can put it out again. I'll type it up at the end of this. GST Plus provides a free software. See, we've got so much inputs already. So we have two invoice softwares now. GSTplus.com. The only thing is long term also it should be free, or we should come into something so we can check that out. So we can have somebody do a demo of GSTplus.com also. Companies like Iron Mountain, Crown Retention for document maintenance. Yeah, so Crown is a service provider. So what he's talking about is document maintenance. So after it all gets over, where do you send it? So there are organizations like PN Writer, Crown, Recall, Iron Mountain. So, but all that comes at a fee. So all that has to be included in your fee to be able to charge. Since we are now required to maintain all the working papers for 8 years, how to ensure you have to maintain like a digital data retention of the client, which is no longer that storage is cheap. So see, you first prepare a standard set of working papers, scan it all, and put it on cloud storage. Because otherwise, and then you hire one low cost, go down for 5,000, 6,000 bucks and go and dump your papers there if you want to maintain the papers. I mean, this is the only solution, which is why I'm telling you, today, if your article assistant has to scan and archive everything, there is a time cost associated with that. This is something we are not building in any of our fee proposals. These are things you need to explain to a client. I need to retain records for 8 years, etc. So but this is an extremely good point. So when you're doing that overhead calculation, please put one extra line. So another way of pricing thumb rule is 3x. 1x is the cost of the firm, 1x for overheads, and 1x for profit. Excellent. So that's the same thing. So what he's saying is my salary charge out cost is X. I will just multiply it by 3 times and calculate. Wonderful. So that's a benchmark. That's a thumb rule. By that thumb rule, your charge out rate per day as a partner would be something like 75,000. Market has to bear. So you may want to check that out. There is a saying in Tamil, Aal Padi, Aadai Padi, which is man is half and attitude is half. Your today's seminar has spelled out that we should have an attitude that is fair. Yeah, correct. So he says we need to develop an attitude where charging fee is treated as fair and right. Yeah, that's from Mr. TRL. I completely agree with you. See, my point is if you don't speak about yourself and you don't speak for yourself, it will be very difficult for somebody else to appreciate it. So just that confidence. See, what is the worst a client can say? He can say no, in which case you're going to agree to a lower fee level or you're not going to do it, which is fine. It's also the ability to take a no sometimes that's very important. Lakshay 95, as being a young CA, knowing on point which we should get to know before entering into a partnership. So, so that's what I said. Pick a partner who does things other than what you do, preferably the same age group. But I have another piece of advice for young CAs. Why don't you go become partners in older firms where they don't have a succession? Honestly, I didn't know all this when I started. Otherwise, I would not have started one more practice. But this is a very good idea. I think this market should mature, and if the seniors can, sort of give it to the younger firms, that's something that's very relevant. Recently, ICA issued networking guidelines, how to go about it practically. This will have to be, I'm planning a separate series on this alliances, formal alliance, informal alliance, what's an associate, what's a network, what's a merger. But in all this, I basically want to start something very simple. I think we need to work together. So A, if I'm the statutory auditor, refer other services to other firms and allow this market to grow. 2, if I find if a client asks me, can you work in Madurai? Please don't say no. Go to your WhatsApp group and say, is there anybody in Madurai? So either you can refer it, you can take it in your name and refer, or you give it to him straight away. And between CAs, you can even share referrals. So there's no problem. You should allow this market to grow and allow somebody else to do the work and do it. Then I think it's simple. My point is, if I can't do something, at least let somebody else do something. So, and you see, when this happens, the Madurai CA, when he gets something in Chennai, he'll obviously come to me and say, Priya, can you do this for you? Give it time, it'll all happen. To collect old arrears of fees. So first of all, please get your MSME registration. Second, it's not wrong to issue a legal notice. So, and the third thing is to keep sending gentle reminders. Send gentle reminders every Friday, every Wednesday. Then do that for about a month. If he doesn't do, but for you to collect your fees, you should have an engagement letter and all that. Just be a little careful that you've actually done the work and he has agreed to pay. So that's Mr. Kumar. So the other things that one more thing I've always thought about it in the fees. You should try and get your fee as soon as this engagement is over, because after that people forget the pain. It's just another bill. We've put in so much effort, so you try and work on that part. Timing in a CA bill is very critical. Just past CA how to evolve more in an individual partner perspective. It's a grind. You have to just talk to many people. That's the only thing. But I hope in some sense your questions would have come in before I spoke. So maybe in some part it provides some answers. The online portals and service providers are becoming a big threat in terms of the fees that we can charge. Order of the day. Please start an online portal yourself. Why is there not much innovation coming from CAs? So if they can do it, we can do it too. So I think we should start. This is what I meant by Uberization and productization. Don't be just a service organization. Another very interesting thing, I mean, I keep saying all this, but takes time to do. You must decide that 1/3 of your fees every year will come from annuities. 1/3 should come from products. 1/3 should come from new services, new clients, something like that. That's a good way of working on it. So I have one partner who's very high on retainer and I'm on zero retainer. But each one's thing, but it all works. But retainers are again a good idea if you're starting practice. Thank you, Kumarevelu sir. Thank you, Shravan. I can send you the proposal formats. I'll send you a lot more also, but the word and all will be in different fonts. Kindly just work on it. Clients DSC. Oh, clients DSC. Then, so that's the other challenge. See, it's better to use a DSC by the concerned person itself. So ideally, a DSC is that person's signature. So be a little careful about it. Thanks, Rekha. Practice Essentials is a very good initiative. I will continue with more webinars. Thank you. Mr. Nagaraj. Mr. Nagaraj is a very old, one of my first people I knew, but I don't think we've met. Thank you, Mr. Ravi. ICI is also doing a lot of work. So it's just that I think as a private webinar, you have some advantages of ensuring that you can have consistent speakers, meaning I can do multiple. But when it comes to ICI, you will need to have multiple speakers, so different perspectives. In case of director's signature usage, we must get an authorization from the client. So that's a very gray area, right? How can somebody authorize me to use a DSC? Ideally, the DSC is to be done by them. I'm gray, but I would think that it's better. How will you? I mean, it just doesn't. How can somebody authorize somebody to use a DSC? Just think through this. We can have an offline conversation. What are your suggestions regarding administrative aspects of managing a CA office? We'll do a separate webinar on this. It starts from your safety security today, hand sanitizers and somebody sitting there, to actually how do you regulate entry into the office? We'll go into it. I mean, administrative would mean managing your IT, your premises, your safety security, your documents, your workflow. It's a very large term. That is from Mr. B.V. Rabindranath. And again, if there's anybody amongst the audience here who believe, for example, that GST Plus or that Zoho invoicing, if you want to do that short module in the next time when we are going to do this demo, please message me privately. It's absolutely possible. See, and you don't have to worry about, whether you'll be that, Obama level speaker, doesn't matter. If you can just show us what is the thing, it's more than enough. What is the starting point to find a work opportunity, especially at some stage after 3 to 4 years into practice where we have exhausted all our network and known sources? I think the larger firms will be a good bet. See, but again, this is from Kirtana, Krishna Kirtana Kumar. So see, one thing I found is you can't say I will sit in my office or my house and I want work to come. That doesn't happen. Initially, the client wants to see you. And I've done that grind quite a bit, so I can actually speak for it. I mean, I've been to places like Bhadrachalam for 15-20 days and all. Initially, it feels a bit difficult, but that is a challenge. If you say I can't go out and work, you might have a problem. But otherwise, one good part to start with could be to engage with larger firms for subcontracted work. Because the larger firms are also going through that bit of struggle. See, we have articles, but we may not have that good quality managers. So if I can get some chartered accountant who's willing to help me, provided the chartered accountant has done this kind of work before, then it makes mutual benefit for both. Thanks, Renuka. Thanks, Muthukumar, sir. Do you recommend having a separate LLP stroke company for taking care of product-oriented practice, which you referred, especially keeping the scope of advertisement and marketing in mind? So it's very simple. Whether you form, so you are talking about this management consulting company, which is the other option. See, today you can have a corporate form of practice, but I don't think it's all that easy. I mean, you'll be riding two horses, and anyway, you can't do work for the same client. I can't do audit in XYZ and consulting in XYZ Private Limited. That's not allowed. But from a firm valuation perspective, if you're building a product and you want an investor to come in at a later date, etc., then I think looking at a corporate form of organization might be a better idea, purely from a scalability perspective. That's Mr. Deva Kumar. Thanks, Meenakshi. Thanks, Mr. Krishnamurthy Rao. Thanks, Arun Kumar Sundraman. A little shy soul. Thanks for the compliment. Zoho Books. Yeah. So Ashok Ji, sir, I'll page you separately. We can definitely, since everybody wants to do this. Madam, I would like to practice in management services, but keep getting other areas like tax to work on. Would you suggest to take up those or keep focus in one area? Please share your thoughts. A good start point will be to get one junior, one assistant for you. Give away some amount of your tax work to him so that your time is freed and go into a new area. It makes a lot of sense. And especially, your question is very passionate. So do it. Unless you decide, I want to become the Arvind Dattar of tax, then you stay in tax. It's again a very personal choice. Some of us feel individually I'm a great contributor. I may not be a team player. In which case, be that individual contributor and dazzle. You could be another Malegam, who knows? In practice, accumulating the services and raising a consolidated bill is not at all advisable. You should have addressed this webinar rather than me. Absolutely true. You keep breaking up your bills into milestone. So those are the things that you agree in your proposal. You say 20% advance, 25% on this, 50% on. Client also small bills and start paying. Yeah. And see, after you finish your work, we don't remember the doctor and we don't remember the chartered accountant also. So it's very important. So very informative webinar. Thank you. That's Rama Devi. Thanks, Rama. Thanks, Mr. Surendran, for this not consolidating bills. So that's the other advantage of this webinar. So in fact, I go back with several takeaways. I'll check out this Zoho invoicing and GST Plus. Thank you, Manaswini. Again, very old contact. I know. Some websites are charging nominal fees for incorporation of the company. New clients are comparing our fees with those websites. You tell them that when you go to a website company, they will get a copy-paste articles and memorandum of association. This is something people don't understand. Now, the articles, and this is something I've seen in just too many cases. Today, the Companies Act allows entrenchment. For example, as a provision. Let's assume there are two shareholders, 25 and 75. Let's say. If you go with one of these robust service providers who do it like a factory, special resolution will always be 75%, correct? Minority shareholder has no protection. Whereas when you come to a chartered accountant to write the articles, I will say special resolutions in this company will be 80%. That's one example you have to give. The second one you have to tell them is, sir, your article is your legal guide. Memorandum is okay. Objects clause, somebody is going to vet it and give it. Say, just on articles, how do I configure my directorships? How many directors am I going to have? Is it odd or is it even? Is there going to be a chairman? Is there going to be a casting vote? Very, very important. You will never get that in a company making factory. It's up to you to explain it to them. So, and obviously, if it's 5,000 rupees, a filing site is doing it, it'll all come with its issues. So, that's the point. And but say today everybody is on the thing. So maybe you will not charge the X that you wanted to charge. You will charge X minus, but certainly not like a mill output. I can think of innumerable examples of articles, and I've also seen some of the articles which have come out from these mills. I've seen copy paste errors. I've seen very divergent comments. So, of course, they'll give you that thing and ask you to modify, but still, how much of your client would know to modify? See, because in the Companies Act, there are several provisions where the articles will be standing. And if it's not contained in the article, then that provision will come. So you need to educate. Thank you, Ramdas sir. Thank you, Tamanna Srinivas. And I hope so in everything, so this is, I hope it's not getting very long. But I'll just share, let me just finish. I'm going to finish and I'm going to just tell you a small story. So thanks so much. Thank you so much, Tamar Selvi, Uma, Dev Kumar, Chandrasekhar, TS. Don't know how many of you are senior to me, but you can add a sir everywhere. Zoho Books, Zoho Payroll, Zoho Expense is now free for 3 years by ICICMP. So fine. Thanks, Rahul, for this input. So if somebody is a user, I want them to come and demo. I don't want a demo from the company because they'll show us what is there. But if somebody can show us some practical illustration, and maybe that's a webinar we won't record. So if a couple of us can understand, it'll be very good. Thanks, Rahul. Rahul, if you don't mind, you and the other person who had suggested GST Plus, please message me privately. So, Tamanna, thanks. Thank you, everybody. So this is on this question of why a chartered accountant, makes a difference. So a very senior gentleman. He was a chartered accountant and the MD of a company and chairman of another very large company. So he said sometimes all this process is such a no-brainer. Just 1 minute. Oh, it got cut, sir. Hopefully. Yeah, sorry. Am I audible? Okay. Can somebody just chat up if I'm audible or it's, yeah, okay. So it's a very small story and I'm going to wind up. I think the webinar might close also. So he said they're so tired of this process. We were looking at one report where somebody had put red, orange, green, and everybody loved this stoplight chart. So one auditor had written explosion protection equipment not functioning, and it was an orange. He said, I just freaked out because I said, how can this be in orange? Yeah? Either it has to be red or it has to be green. So that's the power of intuition. So how much of a technology happens and these factories happen and the filings happen and productization happens, I don't think you can substitute human intuition and intelligence. And that's the reason why I think they've studied to be what we want to be. I think they're an enormously nice set of people. That's part of the happiness and the problem. I think we just need to be a little more, getting there. That's about it. And thank you so much for this opportunity and easily one of my best loved webinars. Thank you very, very much. Anybody who would like to speak, I can attempt. So, Rahul, would you like to say a few words? You seem to have, okay. Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. Anyone wants to speak, then you can put your hand up. So, doesn't seem to be there. So, thank you very, very much. And hope to see you day after tomorrow. No, tomorrow is a seminar on IBC. And for those of you who think you want to connect to it, please do come. Just come and at least see. He's a good speaker. He's from Bombay and he runs a very large foundation called the IP Foundation. And they do a lot of pro bono work for the IP community in IBC. And day after tomorrow, we have MR Venkatesh. So look forward to more. Thanks. Bye.